Tell me if this sounds familiar. You're working on a track, but it's not quite coming together. Every time you sit down to finally break out of the rut you're in, you get sucked into tweaking synth settings and compression parameters, and instead of actually getting close to finish, it feels like it probably gets further away every time you sit down to work on it. You can't quite capture that feeling that you had, that you got so excited about when you first started this song, and nothing you do seems to work. You always get caught up imagining how the song could feel if only you had the right sound or setting, or you tweak things in just the right way, and the song feels stuck with nowhere to go, your confidence is being worn down, and it feels like you're being pulled in 1,000 different directions at once. I've been there, and you might even be there right now as you watch this, you poor sweet thing. But there's something that you can start doing today that you already know how to do that will help you finish songs faster and increase the quality of your productions. The only catch is that it's not particularly sexy or exciting on the face of it, but it is a must in every relationship. You gotta commit, baby. Or bounce, or export, or render. But first, let's talk about how we got here. This is related to something that I was talking about in a different video about empty canvas syndrome, that feeling where when the possibilities are so wide open that you could do anything, it gets really difficult and you have too many options. Really difficult to make anything interesting happen. As soon as you lock down some definite criteria for what the thing you're making actually is, all of the questions that you have to answer in order to actually finish the damn thing become so much easier to figure out. A short but also somehow soul-witheringly long time ago, I was listening to Beneath Radar, the Count Mix. That is a Liberty Sound reference for those of you playing outside of bingo at home. It's got this like really lovely long intro that really just kind of builds and builds up this tension. And one of the things that really helps that tension to feel like it's kind of building and you're getting these kind of micro lifts and releases in it is this sound. Did you catch that? The main sort of woodblocky sound that's doing the main melody reverses at the end of the phrase, and you get this nice kind of like oh into the next kind of section. And listening to this made me realise that like he's arranged this tune out of audio files, because I was doing everything in MIDI at the time, so all my drum samples were in MIDI samplers and all my synths were MIDI synths. I was clicking everything into the piano roll or whatever. So I was kind of listening to it and thinking like, well, how could you do that? And sure, you could like export the different phrases and chuck those in a MIDI sampler and just reverse that one sample or whatever, that one section of it. And when you're working with an audio file, making that kind of edit to just like reverse one bar of your phrase is so trivially straightforward. It made me kind of realise that like, hey, there's a different way of doing things, and you end up having different types of ideas and you end up manipulating your musical material in different ways by working with it in audio instead of in MIDI. And that's the first benefit. There's a bug on my finger. Hi, friend. That's the first big benefit of working with audio and bouncing things out, is that you get the opportunity to edit and manipulate it in different ways than you would otherwise have access to. Here was at least one producer that I really looked up to who was doing things in a different way than I was. So I decided to give it a try myself and investigate and see what benefits I could find from changing the way that I worked. And here's what I found. If you're the type of producer that gets caught up tweaking synth parameters or shifting EQ bands around when what you really want to be doing is finishing more songs, then you can just remove the temptation to get sucked into all of that stuff by committing things down to an audio file. Committing to your sound palette and whatever processing decisions you've made so far by rendering them out enables you to take away all of those distractions. You may never know. Peppa! Peppa! Come. Oh, there she is. Committing to your sound palette and any processing decisions that you've made by rendering it out to a file helps you to hear what you've actually got rather than imagining what you could have. And I get it, the anxiety of like, what if this is too much saturation, or oh, I wish I'd put the cutoff of that filter 100 Hz higher, or I wish I'd made a different change there. For whatever reason, it's powerful. It's a powerful anxiety. But if you pin down these things, it becomes easier to make decisions about them. You will figure it out. You can trust yourself. And if your worst fears come true, well, that's fine, because that's exactly why we keep backups of previous versions of our projects. You do keep backups of previous versions of your project files, right? That's the second major benefit. It helps you to get closer to being done rather than caught up in the quagmire of what if. And if you need more help getting songs finished, then head over to the link in the description and download the Song Completion Kit. It's a guide that's packed with frameworks and strategies for getting your songs from wherever they are to over the finish line and complete. And it's a free download, so go check that out if that sounds like it would be useful to you. Now listen, I'm lucky enough to be producing on an M1 MacBook with bags of processing power that I never have any issues with, but that hasn't always been the case, and unless you're lucky enough to have a production machine that can run up into thousands, you might run into this issue. Processing real-time audio is a pretty amazing computational feat, especially when you consider that your DAW is taking multiple different streams of data from synths and samples and DSP and calculating how it all adds up within just a few milliseconds. We tricked rocks into thinking, and now we use them to do this. But if you find yourself pushing your sweet little processor harder than it can handle, just calculate all of that data one time and read it back instead of having to do it on the fly every single time. Bounce it to audio. Final thing I think bouncing your tracks down can help with is more about the mental process of making music. I love this photo from Steal Like an Artist, a book I've talked about on this channel before. On one side you've got the analog world where Austin Kleon writes on post-its, sketches things, rips things up and starts again, all the creative, free-flowing work. On the other side is the digital setup where he scans, edits and compiles his work. Making these two workspaces separate physical locations is no mistake. It's an intentional part of how his creative process is set up. The two modes, the creator and the editor, are both as necessary as they are incompatible. Splitting the setup means that he can inhabit one world completely instead of flipping back and forth and having them squabble and stifle one another. It's the same thing when you export your tracks as audio files. You can do the work of creating a bunch of material, commit it to audio, and then look back through what you've made with your editing hat on, free from the momentum-halting temptation of, what if I used a different filter? You've got your creative mode and your technical mode, your producing and your mixing, your writer and your editor, and a clear separation between them so that they're each free to do their best work. If you're looking for more insights on how to finish more music, check out the Song Completion Kit in the description. It's got basically everything that I know about the process of writing music and making sure that you actually see tracks over the finish line inside of it. And it's all yours for the low price of 0 non-money.